Hey everybody, just starting a little stream now. Whoop. Sorry about that. Um, so yeah, I normally do these things later in the week as kind of like a news roundup. Um, but I wanted to touch on the results in the UK and what comes next. I'll probably take maybe not necessarily as much questions during this one as I usually do, but please hit us with super chats, because that's essential for the channel. That's part of the reason why we do these extra live streams, is to just keep everything flowing. So let's try to get a couple hundred in the super chat. And please go to patreon.com and become a patron at patreon.com/TMDS and get the global political education you need and strategic viewpoint moving forward. So first of all, I can't sugarcoat it, obviously. I mean, this is really bad. The election result in the UK sucks. Um, and obviously, I mean, look, there's already 10 years of Tory devastation, and it's going to be another several years of cuts. The NHS is in jeopardy. And, I think really an effort to turn the UK into almost like a Singapore or Dubai type of sort of open market island nation, which won't work as effectively again because the future geostrategically is not in the Atlantic. Well, time for Scotland to leave. I wouldn't blame you. I would definitely want to get the hell out of the UK. But I think there's a couple of really important things that I just want to kind of hit moving forward. One, part of the reason that I did, speak up about this, and I think it's important, is first of all because there was a huge amount of courage and vision in the Labour Party, and obviously Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell are very good people. The Lib Dems are trash. It's the equivalent of Biden and Buttigieg is pretending they want the best while working against the strongest candidate. I agree that they are trash. You know, and it's always depressing when you see, like Sean P. McCarthy just pointed out, everyone donate and volunteer to Bernie Harder. Thank you, Justin. Sean P. McCarthy was just saying, I just recorded an episode of Grub Stakers with those guys. By the way, it's a great podcast. I check it out on iTunes and Patreon. Um, that it's always sad when you just see a good person, and Jeremy Corbyn is obviously a good person facing up against some of the worst, most disgusting people like Boris Johnson lose. uh, so there is like an innate sadness and innate pathos to it. But beyond that, let's clear up first. Well, let's talk specifically about the UK. I think Paul O'Donnell, who is of the left working group in the UK, is right, and I wish that I had forwarded his point of view earlier. I really was not sure about this. I felt a lot of ambivalence about Brexit. If it's socialism or Blade Runner, Alien Children of Men of the film represents neoliberal hellscape, and the other a fascist one. I think that you're 100% on point. Brexit was not the right decision. And that being said, the capital must flow. That being said, and O'Donnell makes this point very clearly, and I tweeted this article out. In 2017, Jeremy Corbyn ran on a platform of respecting the Brexit referendum and then clearly and vociferously attacking Tory and Lib Democrat austerity. Maybe Stalin and Lenin had a point, read the purges. And saying we're going to be a government of the many, not the few. We're going to break this neoliberal consensus. We're going to reverse austerity. We're going to shore up the public services. We're going to deliver. And by the way, they won the austerity argument in the intellectual terrain. You could say certainly the kind of Keynesian viewpoint has won. Everybody was in this giant clamor in the professional and liberal classes, who are not even clear labor supporters to begin with, that labor needed to reverse its Brexit position. It could not say what they said in 2017, which now I'm totally convinced they will definitely go after Bernie more in America by comparing him to Corbyn? Do you think voters will fall for it when the media says this? Sean, I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. I will talk about the Bernie comparisons, but first let me just finish my thoughts on this with the UK. Thank you for that question. Belfast, the UP stronghold, went Sinn Féin for the first time since 1885. Well, that's excellent. In 2017, as O'Donnell points out, Corbyn said, look, Brexit, we're going to get the best possible deal we can. And then we're going to just go about the other business of the British people and the UK people. When they capitulated their Brexit position, and I thought it was the rise move at the time because I was, I think, listening, frankly, to more kind of liberal perspectives, and now I realize I think it was just simply the wrong call. Although I do think Brexit was a bad idea. UK student here, just joined the stream. So if you don't know, you covered this yet, but Corbyn has been announced he won't be leading the party into the next election. Yes, Corbyn will not be. I mean, obviously, it's Connor, thank you, and I'm sorry. All solidarity and friendship. When Corbyn capitulated on Brexit, that went into the terrain of the election that all of the sort of liberal hand wringers who were willing to smear Corbyn anyways. I mean, if you look at the New Statesman editorial on not supporting labor, it's disgusting. A complete act of moral cowardice and a complete act of just zero acknowledgement of their own profoundly strong ideological biases. And so I think O'Connell is, Jez should have made the leftist critique of the EU. I think that this is true. And I think that what really did get lost that O'Connell points out, and what you saw in tonight's election results, is that the Tories made gains in the red wall in these working class demographics in the UK electorate and seats that had always voted Labour. And those are namely Labour leave seats. How can we overcome the generational divide? Old people are holding back progress around the world, apparently. Well, one thing is, the cliche is young people need to vote like hell and they need to organize like hell because there is a generational reality to this that is incredibly dysfunctional and dangerous. And the baby boomers will usher us all to our death if we don't get out there. Now, again, the main lens is class, not generation. But there is some truth to that. And there is obviously an overlay with generation and class. So I think that critique is valid. That capitulating on labor was not on Brexit was not smart strategically. Secondly, of course, thank you, Johnny, a massive, sustained, relentless information warfare against the Labour Party. Now, I don't have all of the answers to this. I think strategically, if you look at everything from lawfare and information warfare against the Workers' Party in Brazil, look at the dynamics of the UK, Neera Tanden already came out comparing Corbyn to Bernie. Yeah, I will get to that in a minute. We need serious strategies on information warfare front. It really matters. If I was in the UK, I would immediately sign up and support Tribune Magazine. I'd support Novara Media. And I will say, become a patron of this show. Support all independent grassroots media. The media is stacked against any type of class project, period. And the media monopolies and the absolutely disgraceful coverage of the BBC were real factors in the UK. Now, on the other hand, we need to be ruthless, aggressive, and just absolutely unrelenting. I mean, that anti-Semitism thing makes me feel these people want a Blade Runner world. I feel you. That thing we should have pushed like hell back on that. And that's going to be used. Tory turnout in the winning districts was around 70%. Yeah. You need to push like hell against those lies and smears because this is a template of the war, the destruction of a decent man like Jeremy Corbyn is going to be the global template. We already see it. And you see, I mean, Vic Viana pointed out, Facebook is basically, look, Facebook, the millennials are leaving Facebook, the Zoomers are leaving Facebook. It's a global engine of basically boomer brain rot and far right politics, including genocidal politics in places like Burma. I feel sad for the future British citizens who are going to have to experience the healthcare system we have in the U.S. because of austerity. But it shows if we can't slack now in the U.S., vote Bernie and donate. Now, let's get to the comparisons here. One, this is bigger than a Anglo comparison, and it's very typical. Obviously, in the United States and the UK, there's deep connections between the two countries, and there's parallels. But also, the United States is part of the hemisphere we're in, and in the hemisphere, there has been wins for the left recently in Latin America. There are incredible mass mobilizations happening in Chile, in Colombia, that really take central aim at the core of the problem, neoliberal capitalism. So, if we were to think of what America is, which is a Pacific country and a country of the Americas, as well as an Atlantic country, a country that spans so much, a Caribbean country, a country that has a huge Hispanic population, a country of mass diversity and connections to movements and politics globally, all of that is pushing this new deal of the 21st century that Bernie Sanders represents. So I'd love a Chris Matthews hot take when you get a chance. Uh, Jeremy Corbyn could have learned a lot from Tip O'Neill. What about Uruguay? Well, Uruguay was a bad result. There's no doubt. And there was also a coup in Bolivia. Okay. So there's a lot of negative countervailing tendencies, of course. That said, in Uruguay, the center left had run the country for several terms, and it went to a runoff and was very close. So I don't know if you can get the type of signal read off of that election as you could off of others. Please just do an impression of Mayor Pete in an AA meeting after a bender the night before. I thought that being a troop would guarantee me the presidency. I guess I went off the handle. I can't really do a Pete impression. I need to work on that. Also, huge amount of misrepresentation of Corbyn's Brexit plan. They presented his plan of people's vote in Brexit 3 months as Brexit in 3 months. Well, yes, look, we all know the media was at war against Corbyn and Labour. The bias was obscene and relentless. But the reality was, and I agree with O'Connell on this, thank you so much, Ian, that was a strategic mistake to go into the terrain of Brexit culture war politics, and also not, really reasserting, look, this was a mistake. We have to figure out the smartest way to do this, and then we got to get to the whole other terrain here of the United Kingdom. And the whole country is getting wrecked and destroyed by the Tories. What do we do about climate when electoralism has failed? Laws obligate people to passively die are illegitimate. Obviously, without question, whether you're building local resilient communities or building mass mobilization movements in class politics, that's essential. I mean, we know that easier said than done, but this is the terms that people need to be thinking on. Now, the Bernie comparison is ridiculous. Sam Harris, I think Boris Johnson was making some of the right noises on austerity. But that's the other really quick thing I want to point out. Boris Johnson's campaign was very smart, and people need to learn from it. And I think people need to look at this guy, Dominic Cummings. Thank you. Did you see Chomsky's take recently on Bernie's chances of winning the primary in general and then policy pass? Really depressed me since I saw it. I didn't, and there's no doubt that it's all an uphill battle. But I think, look, it's all an uphill battle. There's an unprecedented concentration of capital and power. There's a huge amount of dysfunction and disarray on the left. There's a dysfunctional, ossified, delusional liberal class. There's mounting, savagery and authoritarianism in the White House and across the globe. I mean, it's hard. There's also an enormous amount of opportunity and energy, which, if it's harnessed with the right strategy, can exploit contradictions on the other side. That's the truth. It's all true. It's all simultaneously true. Communalism, yellow vests, SRA, yeah, exactly. And then you get those very positive signals as well. But how does the left start to build its own news outlets to combat the smearing of CNN, Fox, BBC, and new media the way forward? Asking for my local YDSA. Support shows like this. Support shows like this. Build out your own media and look for serious nonprofits to support. And I would totally, New Statesman, Times, Post, cancel it. There's way more useful, constructive things like this show, like the Young Turks, like Novara, like the Tribune, like Jacobin, like ProPublica to support. Subreddit, 120 plus DSA SOCDEM reps were way of the burn. I don't quite understand that. The most staggering thing about it, thank you so much. The most staggering thing about this election was the degree to which UK politics is tabloidized. It's hard for me to imagine Labour cutting through it. Well, this is again the media question. Will centrist or leftist replace Corbyn? I have no idea. Do you think Ken Livingstone or George Galloway could be leader? Geopolitically, this does help more left, anti-Eurasianist left perspective. Definitely not. Those two guys are definitely not going to be leader of the Labour Party. Have you forgotten how we protest in the United States? Feel like some muscle connectedness is atrophied via technology. We don't dance. We go to protests. Well, look, there has been strikes across this country, but we need to do a lot more. I think there's also rebuilding the culture of it. WWC will never get class solidarity. Mike, go Bernie. Chomsky's fine. Take popular movement for this. We must embrace hopelessness of reality. As Zizek says, we need to look into our policies again and how to combat Murdoch media hegemony. Still think Jezza, you started a movement. I do. I think Jezza, I think you're absolutely right. We need a long-term effect of this results. If a Scot leaves, they want to leave. Some in the left base of the UK will be seriously cut into in the next election. With Bernie endorsing Jank, is he the favorite? No, but I just interviewed Jank, and actually it's going to be released. We're going to premiere it tomorrow. I started law school this year at 44 after raising 3 kids to fight for progressive policies. AOC's win inspired me. I can't be the only one trained to fight back. We will win. I just hope it's in time. Thank you so much. That's amazing. We need Bernie to win even more now for the UK's sake. TMBS is great content. I appreciate what you're doing. Left media like this didn't exist during the Bush years. Today, kids are spoiled. You got to support all of these types of shows if you can. Contributing to Super Spam, Daniel, thank you. It's profoundly important. That's the only way. I mean, we were actually just mentioned in an LA Times piece today, and that is the way, as an example, you combat the Bernie blackout. But look, I think understanding strategically what Johnson did is very important. He lied. I don't believe him, but he promised to end austerity. Thank you, Veronica. And he played an interesting, we have to be much more subtle because, of course, he indulged xenophobia and so on. And his record is a litany of homophobia and racism and all the rest. However, he pointed to the most diverse cabinet the UK has seen. He had a cosmopolitan reputation as mayor of London, and he really actually threaded a more what would be branded as a center-right position on those areas, and then made noises in an anti-austerity and investment direction on funding. And I got to tell you, I think that's a dangerous formula that we really need to watch and think strategically about. Do you think that backlash towards Tories will accelerate after austerity created by new trade deals begin to noticeably undermine areas of welfare state that Brits take for granted, like the NHS? Yes, Devin, thank you. How to fight media spheres without being Trumpian? Well, it's not Trumpian to aggressively and ruthlessly push back against bullshit. I don't think you need to worry about that. It's a fundamentally different project. Is the UK lost? What will become of Corbyn now? Well, I think Corbyn will stay in Parliament and still be a great parliamentarian. Of course, the UK isn't lost. Nothing is ever just lost. History, material contradictions, and things continue to move on and go. So we need to support our friends in the UK as best as possible. Now, here's a big difference. Bernie Sanders leads Donald Trump in head-to-head matchups. He leads him in the polls. And a reality is, and I wanted to do everything I could to support Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party because I think it matters. I think people obviously are going to draw those comparisons. And I think the Labour Party put forward a great manifesto, and Jeremy Corbyn is a good man and would have been a good prime minister. So I wanted to support that. The reality is that every single poll we have ever seen, at least in the last couple of years, other than that shock result in 2017, which wasn't a win, it was just way better than expected. Jeremy Corbyn has steadily trailed Boris Johnson and has always been profoundly unpopular. Now, again, electoral politics isn't working. What do we do? Well, I don't think that that's necessarily true. But then it goes to, unfortunately, it sounds like an old left cliche, and it usually is. But the truth of the matter is organize. generate political space outside of politics. I mean, and I don't have the, support alternative institutions. That's really important. Bernie Sanders has high personal approval ratings, is a main and surging contender in the Democratic primary, and leads Donald Trump in all head-to-heads. So on an empirical level, the comparison is ridiculous on an electoral level. Could you do a segment on the winters of discontent in the TMBS? It's kind of a gotcha moment wherever Tories try to argue against public rails, etc. Yes, I will look to do that. That sounds interesting. So all of the people like Neera Tanden and everybody else who want more corporatism and inequality, I'm already working on my next campaign. Australia, UK, the US, it's all fucked. I'm seriously considering the Senate this time around. Big love. That is awesome. And please, everybody, check out What Do You Mean, which is a fantastic, excellent channel. So, but Jeremy Corbyn was a always trailing leader. Lefty Brits fine, become a Maoist third worldist. Whereas Bernie has high personal approval ratings and leads Trump in head-to-head matchups. And this is the next phase here. We need to go incredibly aggressive. Currently, all independent candidates lost their seats. Lib Dems lose more than half. All change candidates lost their seats. Remain lost overall. Yeah, well, that was another thing. Look, the polls never changed. Even with all of the problems, Brexit was the preferred position. And I actually think get Brexit done was very important. Bernie's much more Lula than Corbyn. I think, look, they are going to try to make hay of this, and we need to push back aggressively by talking about the poll numbers. And then when we talk about the poll numbers, then we need to get to the next round, which is like, okay, let's be fucking serious. I would be totally honest. Regular listener to MRTMBS for years, recently decided definitely like your show better music for one. Well, thank you. Become a patron, please. Patreon.com/TMBS. According to Real Clear Politics aggregate, Bernie's rising above Warren and Buttigieg and Biden are dropping. I pay attention to the aggregate. There's a lot of excellent signals in the polls. But let's be real. F. Rupert Murdoch and F. Boris Johnson. Yes. Bernie leads in head-to-head matchups. Elizabeth Warren's a hugely weak general election candidate who is not doing well in head-to-heads, does not have a particularly high rating in Massachusetts. Worst take of the night over the Labor defeat. Is that, it's because of the manifesto and not because of Brexit. It's all because of Brexit. The manifesto, in terms of its constituent parts, is very popular. Michael, have you read anything by Congolese Senator Ernest Wamba D. Wamba? He has written political theory inspired by the ideas of Badiou and Fanon. Seems up your alley. Thank you so much, Dylan. I am going to look that right up. That's fascinating. Please tweet that at me too. Ernest Wamba D. Wamba. Feeling terribly sad. Love the absolute boy. Is the hipster left too disconnected from the working class? Well, of course, yes, without a doubt. And I think, again, that's reflected in the O'Connell piece. Accept Brexit. Make a case for the best, most strategic way of doing it. Chomsky, Michael, please have Chomsky on as soon as possible. Talk to him about Bernie. We'll see. I'm going to try that in the new year for sure. Connor, thank you so much. They should have accepted it and then fought the terrain on purely NHS and drawn those red lines. That's the play. Organized left is best. Bernie 7-point gain in South Carolina, new poll. So it's different because Bernie polls positively and steadily positively. If you want to be serious about beating Trump, you got to start looking at these head-to-heads. And the only people in well positioned are Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And I got to be honest with you, if this was a couple of years ago, I would have to tell everybody honestly, I support Bernie Sanders. I have no doubt Bernie Sanders could beat Donald Trump. But Joe Biden would be formidable as hell. He might even be a shoo-in. In 2016, Joe Biden would have crushed Donald Trump, no question. Now, Bernie definitely would have also won. But Joe Biden, it wouldn't have even been in question. You said you may be going to Brazil. Are you practicing your Portuguese? Well, I may be going, and unfortunately, I'm not. I have not had time, but I really should. So we need to be really clear about that. And I think that what's incredible is a lot of these disingenuous centrists are going to lead us to defeat. This is a situation where they are both strategically and politically wrong. I'm so effing down, grieving tonight, canvas tomorrow. And I think the really clear way of drawing the radical and sharp distinction between Sanders and Corbyn is that Bernie Sanders leads in polls, Jeremy Corbyn does not. It's time to pull the state and revolution again. It's also the other key thing here is the electoral map. I mean, look, British people unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. The reality is that the Rust Belt that you need to win in order to defeat Donald Trump favors Bernie Sanders and his message. Nominating who the centrists want, with an exception of possibly Joe Biden, who is clearly in cognitive decline, is a disaster. And the polls don't bear it out. So you could say, look, I'm ready to have an ideological conversation. And a strategic one. It's important that we need to be prepared the same. It's important that we need to be prepared for the same strategy against Corbyn we use against Sanders. They're already trying to smear him as anti-Semitic. We need a good argument. Shout, should Bernie go full FDR? Yes. Would a Bernie presidency maybe real in the damage Boris would cause in the UK? Love the show, Mike, TMBS, and MR. Make me a better progressive. Yes. I mean, look, a Bernie presidency would help everything. The socialism just got 10 feet higher. That's right. New poll under 30. Bernie's at 52. Quinn poll over the next best, Warren at 17. Organize. We all got a world to win. That's exactly right. Organize, support independent media, build independent institutions. David Pakman says Liz might be better than Bernie. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what context he's saying that, but I just know of all available polling data. I know a lot of people have different ideas. How do we convert conservatives obsessed with migration and immigration to open borders to the left? Well, look, I think if that's your actual number one issue and you have a xenophobic position, you're not going to be part of the left because that is a matter of principle. But more broadly, I mean, this is something that just simply kind of like a lot of rhetoric is not going to help. There needs to be a real explanation of immigration policy, a clear, placing of the blame on bosses and capital and not fellow workers. And there also needs to be, clarity. I'm sorry. Look, we're not going to have open borders tomorrow. Of course, we're going to have borders, but we're going to have borders that are humane. And we're also going to talk about the broader context of why, as an example, there was a refugee crisis coming from Latin America. That's our foreign policy. So I think it's going to be something that you have to draw clear principles on, but then also talk very strategically and effectively about that in a worker-facing way. Have you read William T. Vollman? If not, look up his book, Poor People Rising Up and Rising Down, Carbon Ideologies and Seven Dreams. He's the most empathic, productive writer. That sounds really interesting. I will check it out. I like those titles. Is there a real centrist ideology, or are they just useful idiots parroting Fed narratives from the oligarchy? Hard to understand their position. I think a lot of it is, but I think their position is to be the soft face of capital. Off topic, but have you seen Mike Huckabee's tweet about Trump being eligible for a third term? I'm about to blackpill myself at this point. Oh my God, calm down, everyone. Tories and the CIA support the Hong Kong protests. Just calm. Don't get to the Trump third term. If Bernie doesn't win, give a reason I shouldn't quit politics. Well, because the fate of the earth and the species depends on it, and we need to organize for every single scenario because we don't have the luxury of cynicism. It's difficult to have this conversation, but who is your pick to replace Corbyn as leader? Left is best. I really have no clue. I will think about that. Given Bernie is smeared as aggressive as a candidate, what happens if he actually wins? How would the establishment go on to oppose him? Well, in the same way, media, if they gave him a chance, judiciary, there would be huge, massive, relentless corporate congressional power, smear campaigns, lies, corporate propaganda, dirty tricks, PR. I mean, this is another reason, look, this is really serious stuff. This is why I want the left, as I said, there needs to be a fusion of a much more emotionally intelligent, exited the vampire castle left and a Machiavellian one. I mean, a left that is really taking things extremely seriously, being more pragmatic, being more forgiving, working with each other better. It's not like a little scene, it's like real politics. And then on the other hand, I mean, you talk about how to fight back against this stuff. I mean, absolutely ruthlessly and relentlessly. You learn from Corbyn is one thing you can learn. And again, all the cards were stacked, but one advantage we do have here is a much more developed independent media. And we got to just push this shit back forever. Solidarity from Settler State Canada to the Michael Brooks Show Plus team. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Ninja. I would love you to discuss Michael Parenti and Christian Parenti to speak on every issue I've heard you discuss. The interview would be even better. I will look into that. How can we ensure 35 show up for Bernie? Well, we can't ensure anything. And again, it's the same old boring answer. You got to organize. But that's the truth. Um, Share clips of this show. Share things that you think might be relevant to them. And then the Sanders campaign is excellent in terms of all of the ways, if you go on the website, that you can materially support that campaign. Bernie is Naruto and Corbyn is the third Hokage. I have no idea what that is. If Warren struggles early, any chance she drops out and joins Bernie as VP? And would you be down for that? I'd be down if that moved Bernie forward. Sure. And I think there is a problem. Why didn't you call out Sam when he raged on Jamie? What do you mean call? Look, I don't do all that bullshit. You got to be in a situation and read a room, and obviously it was inappropriate, and he apologized. She accepted his apology, and you move forward. I mean, I don't, again, that's like internet talk. You have to be sitting in a room and read what is actually going to be the smartest approach to this here, for everybody's sake, not the kind of posture. Michael, have you read Cornel West's early works such as Prophecy of Deliverance or The Ethical Dimension of Marxist Thought? Rough night. I read The Ethical Dimension of Marxist Thought ages ago, and I'm looking forward to reread it. I'd recommend everybody watch Cornel West tonight. You know how Congress seems historically weak. If Sanders wins the Oval Office, suddenly Congress will become a much stronger branch. Definitely, it's going to require every single scenario. Look, if Bernie wins, if some Democrat wins, if Trump wins, we are going to do the same thing the next day. We're going to have to do this show. We're going to have to educate people. We're going to have to organize. We're going to have to be on the street. We're going to have to support different candidates. It's always the same scenario. The depression I'm seeing is what our political enemies want in this capitalist realism world. It's part of the system. Lula and Bernie will keep inspiring. As some fall, more Bernies will arise. Absolutely. And there's movements. It's happening. Look at Chile. Look at Lebanon. Look at Iran. Look at Iraq. And yes, violent crackdowns, persecutions, but people are taking enormous risk. Bernie hasn't been clear about his strategy on China. What would the left strategy to China be to avoid a new Cold War? I think it's great that he's talking about collaborating with China on a global Green New Deal. Beyond that, I will just tell you that I'm doing a lot more work and reading and research around China. And in the coming year, there's going to be way more content on China from a variety of perspectives, critical and laudatory, but really to formulate what a real smart thought process is. Just read Brett Siemens' horse shit op-ed on the Washington Post. What's the best response to labor accusations of anti-Semitism? That they condemn anti-Semitism in every way, shape, and form, and people are equating. And look, there's small examples. There's small examples certainly in the Tory party. What the former Speaker of the House, John Bercow, said, having he never experienced any anti-Semitism from labor, and also that the people are disingenuously conflating advocacy for Palestinian human rights with anti-Semitism. Our election cycle is insanely long, but on the other hand, it's taken up time, e.g. for Buttigieg's McKinsey stuff to shake out. Finally, Bernie's rising as the media chews through the rest of the field like packed gum. Yeah. How the hell are we with people who would rather not afford to go to the hospital than see a foreigner there? Well, I just don't think that is the majority of people. I think, again, people who literally are voting out of that's a product of so much distortion and ideology and racism and everything else that's a decades-long project to deprogram. And that's basically cult thinking. Thanks for all you do, Michael. Results like this highlight the importance of alternative political institutions, build dual power. Electoral politics is one battlefield, but there are many others. Absolutely. The best cure for depression is volunteering for real. Absolutely. Majority Report and Chapo should do a super collab episode. Curious about your thoughts on the land value tax. I don't know enough about that, but I will look into it. Given recent studies showing that the time to stop irreversible climate change is shorter than people expect, is there any hope given the superpowers could remain trending to the right for a very long time? There has to be hope. There's no choice for there not to be hope. And I would really not, again, it's a dialectic. Don't deny the scale of the problem, the danger, but that type of ideation is not going to help you get out there and do what needs to be done. Hey, tell Sam to quit saying the wrong date of the Iowa caucuses, February 3rd. I'm sure there will be an ice storm fighting on the ground here in Iowa. Awesome. February 3rd, get out there for Bernie. How do we make Dennis Johnson regret being prime minister? Organize like hell. In our response to mainstream media manipulation shows like Nira ineffective, I feel like they successfully troll us all the time, suffer no consequences. Well, again, build alternative institutions and push back. But I mean, no, of course, those institutions are designed for that. I hate super chats constantly interrupting your flow, ruining the clarity of your arguments, but I so appreciate you and your show. Well, look, I appreciate all of you. Take my money, Mike. We need you more than ever. Any words of wisdom for a leftist trying to become a journalist? That's a really good question. Well, first of all, I'm honored. I don't know if I mean, I think I consider myself much more like an analyst, commentator, but start producing content. Honestly, there really are so many areas, particularly even just like in the local space, that people just need to go out and cover things and talk about things in every medium. Um, it's generic, but really, you got to do it. It's really important, and I honor and support that. Need to remind people the Democratic primary has no winner take all states. Even if it's clear we lose a state, we need to maximize losses, minimize losses, and maximize wins. Every vote matters here. Yes, go out and vote and organize for Bernie Sanders in every single state. There is nothing more important. And I will support, even in a catastrophic scenario where Bernie's not the nominee, I will support voting and strategy in such a way that removes Donald Trump from office. But this is where the anti-electoral, look, people who are into being anti-electoral, if they actually are, it changes the Democratic Party to win a local level. If they are actually saying that, we couldn't upset, that electoral power is not important and can somehow be like skipped over in some type of magical process. Well, that's insane nonsense and bullshit. However, if you have all of your process in electoralism and institutions, you are not going to create the actual profoundly necessary countervailing power that needs to be pushed forward in any of these scenarios. In the best case Bernie Sanders scenario, that's why he says he's organizer in chief. In some type of Democratic administration, that is vital for harm minimization and continuing to create left space. And if Trump is reelected, we need to double our efforts. I'll do even more shows if Trump is reelected. Because we got to get out there. There isn't a choice on this. We need Bernie to adopt Corbyn's right to co-op policy. He does have a policy like that. Can we talk about Fuentes and his rising faction? I don't know anything about that. Nothing. This is your coolest fit, by the way. Oh, thank you. Much appreciated. I do my best. Would you guys please have George Gaskin on? He's running an LA County DA. He was just endorsed by LA Dems. And Patrice Collier's BLM founder. He's going up against horrible incumbent Jackie Lacey, who's endorsed by Feinstein and Garcetti. I will definitely look into that. Yes, do it. Since I started my channel, I'm happier. That's a really great signal right there. Whether you're talking about volunteering, working for Bernie Sanders, getting involved in a movement, or generating content, taking that nervous energy and manifesting it into something constructive really has seriously positive consequences. And I mean, I look, I go through a lot of stuff covering this stuff. There's no doubt about it. And I think in some ways our job is actually to hold a space for some broader view and some optimism, particularly on a night that sucks like this. But there's still a lot to process, believe me. But at the same time, the act of doing and intervening and feeling like you are playing some constructive role is enormously beneficial, and people need that. I'm curious your thoughts about the USMCA and how the left can use opposition to this trade deal to beat Trump. Well, no, I have really mixed feelings about it. I think that on a policy level, it might actually be helpful for AMLO. It does good things. Check out Dan Bull's rap about Tony Benn. It actually, it gets rid of this investor state dispute mechanism, which is actually a really, really important thing to get rid of. Um, on the other hand, I think that generally, obviously, look, these whole trade deals are a disaster across the board mostly, and Bernie should be hammering Biden like hell on PNTR with China and NAFTA and so on. That's the only thing we should ever be hearing about Joe Biden: bankruptcy bill and trade bills. Michael, take my money. Also, what's up with the gold chain? Have you been hanging out with my peeps in the Heights? Bernie 2020. I mean, it's just called being fashionable. It was a gift from somebody important to me. Would you be willing to come to Chicago to campaign against pro-life Dan Lipinski? I'd be open to it, and if it would be helpful, I would be open to it. Former Yang supporter, you converted. I'm now canvassing for Bernie. Thanks for recommending King Leopold's Ghost. We'll become a patron of TMBS once the election's over. My money has to go to Bernie right now. I mean, I will say, honestly, do you ever listen to this grime music? Any favorite grime artist? Plus, Algerian election today where protesters won did not get to vote because of a sham election. I will follow up with Algeria next week, and I like grime music, but I just don't know it. That's fucking amazing. I converted you from Yang. That's a proud achievement. And I would say, yes, give to Bernie, of course. Honestly, if you do give a bit, and I could, cook you up maybe with a Patreon deal, shows like this are also essential to the election effort, but definitely to Bernie. Book title suggestion, right word grift. That's a good one. And that's awesome. I would actually really be curious to figure out how we flipped you from Yang, because that's a whole other thing. Again, look, if people fuck around with Gabbard and Yang a couple of percentage points in New Hampshire and screw up, I mean, right there, I mean, that's a catastrophe. Want Machiavelli spirituality? Bernie should drop out and demand his supporters back Warren, then Warren Bernie. Why? I mean, look, it's just foolish. She's a weak general election candidate against Donald Trump and does not have a movement behind her. If you're not seeing, again, setting aside the clear ideological distinctions, if you're not seeing the profound potential weaknesses going up in a general election against Donald Trump, I don't think you're looking at this very clearly. Thank you. Have you seen Logical Fallacy Destroys Ben Shapiro? No, I have not. I feel the same sentiment. This is my first time volunteering and it has become a community for me, not to mention free training. I cannot recommend it enough, even if you have anxiety like me. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. That is really, really good to hear. So guys, I think we got to keep going. Even in the worst case scenarios I can imagine. Obviously, tonight is a worst case scenario for the United Kingdom. Have I dialed for Bernie yet? I will be in the coming weeks. I literally have had just zero time, but I will dial for Bernie sometime in the coming weeks, and I may take a trip to New Hampshire, and I'm going to definitely be doing door work in New York for Bernie. Big takeaways: the capitulation to the Liberal forces on Brexit was a strategic mistake. Read Paul O'Connell, really smart. Bernie and Corbyn are radically different because Bernie leads consistently in the polls. Would you be willing to do another live show in Chicago? I would definitely be there. Of course, we want to go back to Chicago, no doubt. I'm not sure when. Meantime, consider going to the TMBS live show at the Bell House February 7th. Y'all become a patron, then join us on Discord. Yes, that's another amazing benefit. Doesn't Warren's strength show that our movement is ideologically lacking and undisciplined? I don't think Warren is the definition of weak candidate. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't buy ideas that she's a weak candidate, that she's a strong candidate. I've seen nothing empirically. I see a lot of projection that people think because they like her, other people like her. Warren's two-part healthcare bill is so stupid. No, I mean, look, I don't think Warren has a huge amount of strength, and I think it could be read another way, which is that for some people, I mean, look, obviously, I don't think Warren should be running, of course, but I think for some people, it's a conduit, and I've heard some people using Warren as a sort of off ramp for more sophisticated left politics. Do you think Corbyn's muddled political position, opposition to the Tories, Brexit weighs heavier on Labour's loss than their positive progressive policies not getting through to voters? I think that their misplay on Brexit was the biggest strategic mistake they made that was within their power. I think you factor in the fact that there's obviously the media war against them. Dead ass, bring that gold chain when you canvass in the NY primaries. Of course I will. But no, I look, their policies were popular and correct. And of course, all of the establishment media is going to blame their policies. So, look, do not allow the next front in the battle for people in the UK is to not allow this election to be blamed on, safeguarding the NHS and making the railways public. That is not why it happened. How can the left address the media's handling of Corbyn anti-Semitism scandal without drawing parallels to right-wing attacks in the press? By just doing it. This is the thing, is what I mean. Like, it's just it. If a liberal tells you that night and day are the same thing, they're not. Like, Donald Trump attacks the press with lies and conspiracies and bullying. If we say that the press is discrediting itself because they're smearing and being dishonest about a candidate, that is the truth. I mean, there is the Harry Truman line, I'm not giving them hell. I'm just telling the truth, and they think it's hell. And people who draw those comparisons are either being stupid or dishonest. So we just ignore them or push back against that. Just trying to stay positive about all this. Solidarity, absolutely. To steal an analogy from Tim Pool, Trump, Thanos, needs to obstruct and held account despite whatever setbacks and losses the left Avengers face, whatever it takes, Bernie 2020. Not to be a dick, but you're like Thanos. How do we best insulate Sanders from the inevitable misogyny Bernie bro charges to be amplified by the corporate media closer to the nomination? I mean, look, push back like hell, amplify, of course, the leadership in the Sanders campaign, and then don't indulge bullshit. Don't indulge it. Push back. And I think in a fair amount of cases, frankly, you could just ignore, random people trying to start drama on Twitter. Do you think Bernie Corbyn is not being as charismatic as someone like Boris or even Sanders might have had a limited impact? Also, come to Minneapolis. I'd love to see you live. Come travel to see us live, and Minneapolis is a possibility. Yes, I do think that personal charisma and other presentation things matter profoundly, whether we like it or not. And I think that Jeremy Corbyn was a very good person. I think he did have a certain charm. I think all of the war against him mattered. And I do think, look, it's an extreme example, but I mean, President Lula had a judicial media warfare against him in every way, shape, and form for years, and he still led Bolsonaro in the polls. Now, it had an impact, the lawfare against him, but there is a part about leadership and charisma and dynamism that we have to be real about. And I think, yes, that's a legitimate thing to consider. Traveling to Minneapolis, from Minneapolis, Kansas City this weekend, attending a sunrise training to learn skills to grow my local hub. You've inspired me to get off Twitter and join the fight in real life. That is so awesome. See, guys, there is a lot to be positive and optimistic about. That is amazing. That makes me feel so good. You guys are amazing. There's an amazing community here. There's an enormous amount of opportunity. There's an enormous amount of danger. Everything we have to do regardless. It's just the time and the reality. I love you back, Kennedy. Thank you for everything, Kennedy. I appreciate all of you guys. I should say Tuesday, Alona Minkowski is the guest. And then on the final week, we're going to have the harder we take it in the chin, the harder we have to hit back. Turn despair into fuel. History is ours. but only if we actually do something. Remember the Third World Movement liberation victories. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. That's beautifully put. I'll be doing another live stream really soon to connect with you guys this weekend. I'll do an extra one this week. We have no choice but actionable optimism because we don't have the luxury of cynicism, and certainly the most oppressed among us don't. So this is really important. I love and appreciate all of you. Go get some rest. Go watch something funny. Go watch some Cornell West talks. Go connect with friends. We have to do God's work because God's not going to. That's right. On a brighter note, centrist Queen Jo Swinson has lost her seat. Well, that's great. We need a soundboard app with your laughs, truly therapeutic. Well, thank you. We need to use the UK election as motivation to make sure we do everything possible for Bernie 2020. I agree. And everything possible in every way, shape, and form. It's all really, really, really profoundly important. So, guys, cheer up. There's many battles ahead. I appreciate all of you. Please do, if you haven't yet, become a patron at patreon.com/TMBS. If you need a deal, let me know. I want to bring everybody on board, and we need to keep really growing out what we do in every way, shape, and form. Because, I mean, honestly, it's kind of shocking how important things like this show, are actually going to play in these battles. And of course, every single thing you do in the Sanders campaign. Brooks is the Sasuke Uchi of the left. I don't know who that is, but I guess that sounds good. Can we get a Sam impression? Gracias. Well, the very interesting thing about the Kensington by-election was that the MP, went to law school with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's not true. You are awesome, Michael. Thank you, Andrew. And so that's going to be a really interesting thing from a legal perspective. Do you see? Oh, wait, pause it. All right, guys. I love you guys. Please become a patron. If you haven't clicked yet, click subscribe. Click the bell button so you get the notifications. Next couple of weeks before the end of the year, Alona Minkowski and Richard Wolff. Get your tickets February 7th to see us live at the Bell House. I'm incredibly excited about it. Thanks everybody who hit on the super chats. Makes a huge difference. Thanks to everybody who participates and hits subscribe and supports the show and spreads the word. I'm honored to be in community with you guys. Much love. Heads held high. There's many other battles ahead, and there is hope too.